everyone is waiting for the bride, everyone is waiting for the groom. And I stood in the shadow of the side door of the church, the screen of my phone was on, and the text message was spread out in front of me. Daniel is at Claire's place. She took pills. I stared at the text message for about 5 seconds. Lily, the bridesmaid, stood next to me, her face almost white. She lowered her voice and said, "Evelyn, don't worry, I called to confirm. Claire just posted on WeChat Moments 3 hours ago. She was putting on makeup, she was trying on dresses, her voice was shaking when she said that." I didn't shake. I took another look at the text message. Then I did something weird. I clicked on Claire's circle of friends. Lily wasn't lying. 3 hours ago, Claire posted a photo. She was in the fitting room, wearing an off-white satin skirt. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to remind people what they're missing." I stared at that photo for about 3 seconds. She is laughing. A man who had just swallowed pills and was about to commit suicide was trying on dresses 3 hours ago. I locked the screen. Lily was still talking, and she said we could postpone, we could explain, we could. I said, "Start the music." She froze. I said, "You heard me. Begin the ceremony." She looked at me and her lips moved, but she didn't say anything. I turned around and pulled the skirt of the wedding dress. Daniel had chosen the skirt with me. He was standing outside the fitting room and said through the curtain, "You look good in anything you wear." When he said that sentence, his tone was very calm, as if he was stating a fact, like saying that the weather is nice today. I thought that was his character. He is rational, restrained and not good at expressing himself. I always thought that was his character. Now I know. That's not character. That's choice. The organ played. We selected box music for 2 months. Daniel insisted on this one because he said it had the most rigorous structure. I thought it was funny that a man chooses wedding music as if he were choosing an investment target. I don't want to laugh at all right now. I walked out. The red carpet was long, 200 feet, maybe longer. I never knew a red carpet could be so long. 300 guests were sitting on either side, and they turned to look at me, and then they looked behind me, and then they started whispering. Because there is no one behind me. My father was sitting in the front row. His expression was indescribable. It was the kind of expression where you want to rush forward but you can't, you want to shout but you can't, you want to do something for your daughter but you can't. His hands were on the armrests of his seat, and his knuckles were all white. Daniel's mother was on the phone. Her voice was low, but I heard her. She said, "Daniel, where are you? Where are you? Answer me." She got no answer. I walked up to the altar. The pastor looked at me. He had probably officiated hundreds of weddings, but judging from his expression, this was the first time he had seen a bride walk down the aisle alone. He hesitated and asked me in a low voice, "Do I need to wait a moment?" I looked at him. I said, "No need." Then I turned around and faced 300 guests. The organ stopped. The church was so quiet that you could hear the candle wicks burning. I took a deep breath. I don't know what I'm going to say next because I haven't prepared a single word before that. I said, "He chose someone else. That's all you need to know." Someone gasped. Someone was whispering to each other. My mother covered her mouth and tears fell down. She didn't cry out, but her whole body was shaking. I lowered my head and looked at the ring on my left ring finger. That ring was designed by Daniel. He said he didn't believe in ready-made styles and wanted to design it himself. I thought it was romantic at the time. I know what it is now. That's control. It's not about controlling me, it's about controlling his own obsession with perfection. I took the ring off. The picking process was harder than I thought because my fingers were shaking. I thought I wouldn't shake, but my hands are shaking. I held the ring up for everyone to see. Then I threw it into the bouquet in front of the altar. The sound of the ring falling on the petals was very soft, but I think everyone heard it. I walked off the altar. As I passed my father, he stood up and grabbed my arm. He said, "Evelyn, Dad is here." Just these 3 words. After he finished speaking, he couldn't continue. I said, "I know." Then I walked out of the church. The sun outside is very dazzling. I was standing on the street in my wedding dress. Passing cars slowed down, some honked, and some whistled. I don't know where I'm going. I just know I can't go back. Lily chased me out, holding my emergency bag, which contained my mobile phone, charging cable, and ID card. She said, "You get in the car first and I will take you home." I said, "I won't go back to New York." She was stunned for a moment. I said, "I want to leave New York." I got in the car. As Lily started the engine, my cell phone rang. It's not a phone call, it's a text message. Posted by Daniel. Claire took pills. I had to take her to the ER. I'll explain everything. I read that text message for about 10 seconds. Then I saw a new message. which was a screenshot of Claire's moments that Lily had sent to me. In that screenshot, Claire was wearing a dress, holding champagne, and smiling beautifully. A person who swallowed pills took a selfie in the fitting room wearing a dress and holding champagne before swallowing the pills. I said, drive. Lily said, where to go? I said, Seattle. I sat in the passenger seat for a long time. When the car was driving on the highway, Lily suddenly said, do you know what the most fucked up thing is? I said nothing. She said that the most damning thing was that Daniel could see the moments that Claire posted 3 hours ago. Everyone can see it. But he went anyway. I looked out the window, the New York skyline getting smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror. I said, I know. Because that's not a mistake in judgment. That's choice. Daniel is in the hospital. Claire was lying on the hospital bed, her face very pale, and her wrists were wrapped with gauze. She didn't slit her wrists, she swallowed the medicine. At least she said she swallowed the pill. The doctor came in and said that after washing his stomach, he was fine and that he could leave after one night of observation. Daniel was sitting on the chair next to the bed. His suit was still on, his tie was loose, and there were water stains on his cuffs. Claire opened her eyes and looked at him. She said, you are here. Daniel said, why are you doing this? Claire didn't answer directly. She turned her head, looked at the ceiling, and said, you are getting married today. Daniel was silent. Claire said, if I didn't do this, you would be on your honeymoon by now. Daniel said, you know this is wrong. Claire turned her head and looked at him. Her eyes suddenly became very clear, the kind of sobriety that was not expected of someone who had just come out of the emergency room. She said, I know. But you are here. That's what I want. Daniel said nothing. Claire reached out and took his wrist. Her hands were cold but strong. She said, if you leave, I'll die. Her voice was calm when she said this, as if she was stating a fact. Daniel looked at her. He didn't leave. During my first month in Seattle, I stayed in an apartment that Lily's friend had vacated. The apartment was small, 400 square feet, with windows facing the brick wall of another building. I don't care. I get up at 7 o'clock every day, turn on the computer, and start taking on design projects. When I was in New York, I had my own studio. It wasn't big, but it was sufficient. I sublet the studio before the wedding because Daniel said we could share his office in Soho after the wedding. This would increase efficiency, he said. I thought he was very pragmatic at the time. I know what it is now. That's integration. Integrate everything into his world, including me. The projects I took on in Seattle were very complex, including Brand 6, website UI, and even someone asked me to design a menu. I don't pick. I need to work. It's not that I need money, although I also need money, but what I need more is to have something to do after waking up every day. In the second month, I received a rebranding project. The client is a local coffee chain in Seattle. They want to change their logo, packaging, and all visual systems. I answered. I started sketching and sketched until 3 in the morning, then went to bed, and then got up at 7 to continue sketching. During this process, I never looked at my phone. It's not that I don't watch. I dare not look at it. Because I know that if I look, I will check to see if Daniel has contacted me. I will go through Claire's circle of friends. I will check to see if the photos from the wedding that day have been posted online. I would go through it all again. So I don't watch it. But I know I haven't let go yet. Because when I wake up every morning, my left ring finger will habitually move, as if I am touching a ring that no longer exists. Every time I finish drawing a design, I subconsciously pick up my phone and want to take a picture to show Daniel. Every time I walk down the street and see a man in a suit walking past from behind, my heart beats faster. Then the man turns his head and it's not him. Then I breathe a sigh of relief, and then I hate myself for being so relieved. In the third month, I started packing. I opened the box I brought from New York and took out the items one by one. Clothes, shoes, books, painting supplies. At the bottom of the box, I touched a small hard box. I open. It's that ring. I don't know when Lily picked it out of the bouquet. She must have put her hand into the lilies after everyone had left, pulled out the ring, and stuffed it into my suitcase. I put the ring in my palm. It was small and light, but it made my hand fall down. I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed the box and stuffed it into the back of the closet. Daniel's life is recovering. At least on the surface. Claire moved into his apartment after being discharged from the hospital. She said she couldn't be left alone and the doctor said she needed someone to take care of her. Daniel didn't refuse. He goes to the company every day, holds meetings, looks at projects, and makes decisions. When he got home from get off work, Claire was waiting for him. She cooks, although she doesn't do it well. She waited for him to eat, although she often waited until 9 o'clock. She sat on the couch watching TV while she waited for him to finish his shower and say goodnight. Daniel began to think that maybe this was fate. Maybe he and Claire were destined to start over. Maybe the disruption to the wedding was a sign that he had made the wrong choice. He wasn't thinking about Evelyn. In other words, he told himself that he didn't think about it. But some things cannot be hidden. For example, he would open his mailbox every morning and see that Evelyn's name was still in the recipient list. For example, every time he passed by Soho, he would subconsciously glance at the window of the studio that had been sublet. For example, in the photo album on his mobile phone, there was a photo of Evelyn, who was asleep on the sofa in his office, still holding a paintbrush in her hand, with a streak of blue paint on her face. He didn't delete the photo. He told himself that it was because he was too busy to organize the photo album. Claire becomes more and more dependent on him. She started not going to work, she started not answering calls from her friends, and she started just waiting for Daniel to come home. Daniel felt this was wrong, but he didn't know what was wrong. In other words, he knew it, but he chose not to look. One night, Claire cooked steak. The steak was overcooked and as hard as shoe soles. Daniel took a bite and said nothing. Claire sat across from him, looked at him, and said, "Are you thinking about her?" Daniel said, "No." Claire said, "You are lying." Daniel put down his knife and fork and looked at her. Claire smiled. That smile was nice and gentle, but something was moving underneath. She said, "It doesn't matter. I can understand that. You need time." Daniel said, "Claire, we need to talk." Claire said, "Don't talk about it." She stood up, walked around behind Daniel, and hugged him from behind. She said, "We don't need to talk. We just need to be together. You are mine. You always have been." Daniel sat there, not moving. He later told me that at that moment, there was a voice in his heart, a small voice, saying, "This is not love. This is something else." But he suppressed the voice, because he doesn't know how to face it. The 4th month, everything started to fall apart. I got a call. The number is from New York, but I didn't save it. I hesitated and accepted. There was a woman's voice on the other end of the phone. She said, "Are you Evelyn Carter?" I said, "Yes." She said, "My name is Megan. I am Claire Whitmore's former roommate. We need to talk." I was silent for 3 seconds. I said, "What to talk about?" She said, "Talking about the wedding that day. Talk about Claire's suicide." She used quotation marks, and I caught it. My hand holding the phone began to tighten. She said that what Claire swallowed was not medicine. It's a vitamin. She texted me before she swallowed it, and she said, "Watch this. He'll come running." I kept the screenshot. I didn't speak. She said hospital records were checked and there were no dangerous doses. She even made an appointment for a checkup in advance. "Do you know what this means?" I said, "I know." She said she did it on purpose. It was intentional from start to finish. She started planning it from the day she found out you existed. I hung up the phone. I sat on the floor of my apartment, my back against the bed, staring at the ceiling. There were no emotions running through my head, just information running through it. Claire swallowed vitamins. She made an appointment for a test. She posted on Moments. She is wearing a dress. She is laughing. She said, "Watch this. He'll come running." Then I thought about Daniel. He saw the text message. He saw the circle of friends. He saw a photo of Claire in a dress holding champagne. He saw it, and he went anyway. He still left behind 300 guests. He still left me. He still chose her. Not because he was lied to. It's because he chose to be deceived. I sat there for, 3 hours. Then I stood up, walked to the closet, opened the door, and took out the small box from the inside. I opened it and the ring was still there. I looked at it. Then I did something. I put the ring back on my ring finger. Not because I forgive. Not because I gave up. Because I need to know that it's still there. I need to know that the relationship is still there. I need to know that I'm not standing on the red carpet alone, that I'm not thrown in there alone. I kept the ring on for the whole day. Wear it when painting, wear it when eating, wear it when taking a shower. It was like a small piece of evidence that what happened that day was real and not a nightmare I had. Then the next morning, I took it off. I put the box in a drawer, not the back of the closet, but the drawer. A drawer I open every day. I didn't throw it away. I won't throw it away. But I'm not hiding anymore. Daniel's way of discovering the truth was more cruel than mine. He was working overtime at the company that day, and Claire brought him dinner. She was wearing his shirt and her hair was wet, as if she had just taken a shower. She placed the lunchbox on his table, then sat next to him and looked at his computer screen. Daniel said, "You go back first, I will be back in a while." Claire said, "I won't leave. I'm waiting for you." Daniel glanced at her but said nothing. He continues to work. Claire sat next to her playing with her phone. Her cell phone rang, a message alert. She glanced at it, smiled, and then turned the phone over, screen down. Daniel noticed. He didn't say anything. But 15 minutes later, Claire went to the bathroom and left her phone on the table. Daniel hesitated for about 2 seconds. Then he picked up her phone. He has no password. Claire has never set a password. He opened her message history. He saw her conversation with her friend. My friend said, "Do you really want to do this?" Claire said it had been done. My friend said, "Is he here?" Claire said, "Of course. He will always come. He can't live without me." My friend said, "But he is getting married." Claire said, "No. I won't let him get married." My friend said, "How did you do it?" Claire sent a smiley face. Then she said, "Just vitamins." Not true. Daniel stared at the screen. He turned down. He saw more. Claire told a friend the day before the wedding, "I had to stop that wedding. He doesn't belong to her. He belongs to me." She messaged on the morning of the wedding, "Dress is ready. Pills are ready. He'll choose." She messaged in the hospital, "He's sitting next to me right now. He didn't go to the wedding. I win." Daniel put the phone back. He sat in a chair and looked at the computer screen, but saw nothing. There was a voice in his head, no one else's but his own. The voice said, "You already knew it. He knows." When he saw that WeChat post, he thought for a moment why a person who was about to commit suicide was trying on dresses. He pushed the thought down. Maybe it was a distress signal, he told himself. Maybe that's her way of saying it. He made up 100 reasons, suppressed the thought, and drove to Claire's place. Because he wanted to go. He knows. He knew it from beginning to end. Claire came back from the bathroom and saw Daniel sitting there, his expression unchanged. She smiled and said, "What's wrong, do you miss me?" Daniel looked at her. He said, "Claire, you are swallowing vitamins." Claire's smile stopped on her face. Only for a moment. Then she smiled again, and that smile was different from before. There is no tenderness underneath, it is empty. She said, "You checked my phone." Daniel said, "Why are you doing this?" Claire sat down, crossed her legs, and looked at him. She said, "Are you sure you want to hear the truth?" Daniel said nothing. Claire said, "Okay. Because you won't choose her. You never choose anyone. You will only choose the person who needs you. She doesn't need you. She has her own studio, her own life, her own ideas. She doesn't need you. But I need it. I will always need you. So you will choose me. You will always choose me." Daniel said, "This is not healthy." Claire smiled. She said, "Healthy? Daniel, when have you ever cared about your health? What you care about is order. What you care about is controllability. She is so independent that she is beyond your control. So you need me. You need someone who is broken so that you can feel like you are fixing something. Only then can you feel useful. Only then can you feel that you exist." Daniel stood up. He said, "Enough is enough." Claire stood up too. She said, "Do you think I ruined you?" "No, Daniel, it's you. I just gave you an excuse. You chose that excuse. When you ran away from the wedding, you didn't come to save me. You are here to save yourself. Because you're standing in that church, on that red carpet, and you suddenly realize that you can't control anything. You can't control her, you can't control the wedding, you can't control yourself. So you ran. You needed a reason and I gave you one. You should thank me." Daniel stood there without speaking. He later told me that at that moment, there was only one image in his mind. Evelyn standing on the red carpet. He wasn't there, but he could imagine it. She could imagine everyone watching her, standing alone in front of the altar, taking off her ring and throwing it into the bouquet. He could picture her face. Not a broken face. It's that calm face. That "I see you now" face. He said that at that moment he knew one thing. He doesn't love Claire. He just didn't want to be empty. When I was in my 5th month, I got a phone call. It's a San Francisco number. The founder of a design studio came to me and said that he saw the coffee brand rebranding project I was doing in Seattle and asked if I would be interested in going to San Francisco to join their team and create a new independent brand line. I said, "Let me think about it." After hanging up the phone, I sat on the windowsill and looked at the brick wall opposite. There is a spot on the brick wall that is a different color. It may be that someone had hung a painting before and then removed it, leaving a square mark. I looked at that mark for a long time. Then I opened the drawer and took out the small box. I opened it and the ring was still there. I took it, walked to the window, and pushed it open. The wind blew in and it was a bit cold. I held the ring out the window and held it up for 3 seconds. Then I take it back. I put the box back in the drawer. I didn't throw it away. I won't throw it away. But I didn't put it back on either. I closed the drawer. Daniel and Claire are completely broken up. It wasn't Daniel who brought it up, it was Claire who left on her own. That night, when Daniel came home, Claire had already packed her luggage. She stood at the door, wearing a black coat, her hair tied up, and no makeup on her face. She looks clean, awake, and sharp. She said, "I'm leaving." Daniel said, "Where are you going?" She said, "It's none of your business." Daniel stood in the living room, looking at her. He said, "Claire, I'm sorry." Claire smiled. That smile has no warmth. She said, "You don't need to apologize. You have never sorry for me. You just feel sorry for yourself. You wasted 6 months. No, you wasted longer. You wasted 2 years. You wasted Evelyn. You wasted everyone. But you don't apologize because you don't feel like you're wasting it. You feel like you're in business." Daniel said, "You are right." Claire said, "I know." She opened the door, walked out, and then looked back at him. She said, "Daniel, go find her. Not for her. It's for yourself, because you never learn. You need to fall again." She closed the door. Daniel stood in the empty living room. Claire left, and the apartment suddenly became very quiet. That kind of silence is not ordinary silence. It is the kind of silence where all the sounds have been taken away. He stood there, looking at the pillows on the sofa, the tableware in the kitchen, and the paintings hanging on the wall. These things were all added after Claire moved in. He never noticed. He had never noticed anything extra in the apartment. He picked up the phone, opened the address book and found Evelyn's name. He looked at the name for a long time. Then he locked the screen. He didn't dare to fight. It's not that she's afraid of rejection. I'm afraid she'll pick it up. Because he didn't know what to say. He didn't know how to explain it. He didn't know how to tell her, "I didn't love Claire. I just didn't want to feel empty." He didn't know how to tell her, "I didn't choose her." So he did nothing. He wasted another 2 weeks. Then one day, while he was in a meeting at the company, a colleague mentioned a design project in Seattle. Colleagues said that the visual system of that coffee brand was made by Evelyn Carter, and it was really good. Colleagues don't know who Evelyn is. The colleague just said it casually. Daniel sat at the conference table and stopped writing in his hand. He booked a flight to Seattle that evening. When I met Daniel, it was the first day of the 6th month. It's raining in Seattle. It rains all the time in this city. I was standing downstairs in my apartment, having just returned from the supermarket, holding a bag of groceries. He walked over from the opposite side, wearing a dark blue coat. His hair was wet from the rain and stuck to his forehead. He stood there, looking at me. I stood there and looked at him. The rain was not heavy, but dense. There was a street between us, maybe 20 feet. Those 20 feet seemed like 20 miles. He came over. He walked up to me and stopped. He said, "Evelyn." I said, "Daniel." He looked at me. His eyes were red, but he wasn't crying. He never cried in front of people. He said, "I need to talk to you." I said, "Okay." We went upstairs. I opened the door to the apartment and he took off his coat and hung it on a hook by the door. He took one look at the apartment. It is small and simple, with design drafts spread out on the table, color cards on the wall, and several pots of green plants on the windowsill. He said, "You live here." I said, "I have lived there for 6 months." He sat down. I gave him a glass of water. He took it without drinking it. He put the cup on the table and was silent for a long time. I sat across from him and waited for him to speak. He said, "Evelyn, I'm sorry. I didn't speak." He said Claire was swallowing vitamins. "Did you get it?" I said, "I got it." He looked at me with surprise in his eyes, but not surprise. He said, "When did you know?" I said, 4 months ago. He fell silent. He said, "Then why don't you contact me?" I said, "Why should I contact you? Telling you that your ex-fiancé is a liar? You don't need me to tell you. You already knew that." His face changed. It's not anger, it's the blank feeling after someone has exposed all the pretense. He said, "You are right. I already knew it." I looked at him. He said, "I saw that circle of friends. I saw her trying on dresses. I know a suicidal person would not do such a thing. But I went anyway. Because I want to go. Because standing in that church, standing in front of you, standing in front of everyone, I didn't know who I was. But standing in front of Claire, I know who I am. I was the one who saved her. I've played that role for 2 years, I'm familiar with it, I'm safe, I can't make mistakes." When he said this, his voice was calm. No crying, no shouting, no breaking down. It's just flat. But that peace is scarier than any collapse. I said, "Do you know what makes me sad the most?" He looked at me. I said, "You didn't go to her place. It's you who didn't come back." His eyes moved. I said, you go, you can come back. You can call me, you can explain, you can say, I made a mistake and I'm back now. But you don't. You stayed with her. You chose to stay with her. 6 months. You stayed for 6 months. He said, I said, what do you think? Do you think I'm waiting for you? Do you think I'll always be there? He didn't speak. I said, Daniel, I loved you. But I don't choose you anymore. He said, I know. He said, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't come to you to ask you to forgive me. I came to you because I need to tell you something. I said, what's the matter? He said, I ran away from the wedding not because I loved Claire. It's because I'm afraid of you. I looked at him. He said, you are too complete. You have your own studio, your own ideas, and your own life. You don't need me. You never needed me. But Claire needs me. She needs me, so she won't leave me. You won't leave me, but you don't need me either. Those two things combined make me feel like you could leave at any time. So before you go, I'm going. I said, so you choose someone who needs you, so you don't have to worry about being abandoned. He said, yes. I said, but you were still abandoned. He smiled. That smile was ugly. The corners of his mouth moved, but there was no smile in his eyes. He said, yes. I said, Daniel, you don't need to be needed. What you need is to face yourself. He said, I know. But I don't know how to face it. I said, that's your business. He raised his head and looked at me. I said, you came to me to make up for your mistakes. But some mistakes cannot be made up for. You can apologize, you can explain, you can understand why you did what you did. But none of this could prevent what happened that day from happening. 300 people watched me walk the red carpet alone. I take off the ring. I threw it into the bouquet. These things happen. They don't disappear just because you understand them. He said, I know. I said, so you are not here for me. It's for yourself. You need to tell me these words so you can forgive yourself. He didn't deny it. He said, Evelyn, I see you now. I looked at him. I looked into his eyes and the look on his face when he said this. He means it. He really saw me. He saw me on the red carpet. He saw me living alone in Seattle. He saw me whole and not needing anyone. But it's too late. I said, that's the problem. You only see me when I'm gone. His face changed. I said, did you see it while I was here? Did you see it when I helped you organize the files? Did you see it when I changed your PPT until 3 in the morning? Did you see it when I was choosing a wedding dress? Did you see me when I stood at the door of the church? He didn't speak. I said, you didn't see it. Because you don't need to see it. I'm next to you, so you can't see me. Only when I leave will you look back. That's not love. That's the panic after losing. He stood up. He said, Evelyn, give me a chance. I said, give you a chance to do what? Prove you'll run away again? He said, I can't do it anymore. I said, you will. Because your problem isn't Claire. Your problem is that you don't know how to be with someone who doesn't want you. And I don't need you. I never needed you. I loved you, but I didn't need you. He stood there, looking at me. His eyes were red, but he didn't cry. He will probably never cry in front of me. He said, you didn't lose me. I looked at him. He said, you never had me. When these words were spoken, the room was so quiet that one could hear the rain hitting the windows. He stood there as if all his bones had been ripped away. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there. I walked over, picked up his coat, and handed it to him. He took it and put it on. He walked to the door and opened it. Then he stopped and didn't look back. He said, that ring? I said, what ring? He said, that ring you threw into the bouquet. Did you take it back later? I said, take it. He said, do you still keep it? I said, keep it. He was silent for a moment. He said, keep it. No need to throw it away. That's not my ring. That's yours. He's gone. The door is closed. I stood at the door, looking at the closed door, for a long time. Then I walked back to my desk, sat down, and continued working on my design. 1 year later. I'm in San Francisco. It's not the project that the previous studio approached me for, it's my own project. I spent a year compiling a portfolio of all the projects I took on in Seattle and created a brand called Identity. Do visual identity, rebrand, and all designs related to self-identity. I rented a small studio on the 2nd floor in the Mission District, with the window facing the street. There are always people walking on the street, riding bikes, and walking dogs. I love this window. Because it's not facing a brick wall. My studio is not big, but it is adequate. The walls are covered with color cards and sketches, tablets and laptops are spread out on the table, and proofing materials are piled in the corner. I arrive at 8 o'clock every morning, and I don't necessarily leave at what time in the evening. Sometimes it's 10 o'clock, sometimes it's 2 o'clock. I don't care. This is my own time. One day, I received an order. Orders are submitted anonymously through the official website. The client requested a ring design. There are no specific style requirements, just one sentence. For someone I finally understand. I looked at that sentence. I know who it is. I didn't reply. I didn't say no. I just opened a new design file and started sketching. I painted for about 2 hours. I drew many additions and deleted many additions. The final version I settled on was an asymmetrical structure. The ring is complete, but the surface of the ring is slanted and not in the middle. Viewed from the front, it looks like a circle with part cut off and then replaced with another piece of metal, but the patch is in the wrong position, so the entire ring looks crooked. But if you look at it from the side, it's flat. It just looks crooked. I finished the last stroke and looked at the screen. I knew this design would never be made into a physical product. He probably won't actually come to get it. He just needs to do one thing to prove that he finally understands. I saved the design file. The file name reads Daniel_Brooks_ring_final. AI. Then I turned off the computer. That evening, I went to the beach. The seaside in San Francisco is very windy and has big waves. I stood on the beach and looked at the Pacific Ocean. The water is gray and the sky is gray, but there is a light on the horizon, very thin and bright, as if someone has opened a hole there. My cell phone rang. I took it out and looked at it. It's a new client, a clothing brand in New York, who wants me to do full case design. I picked up the phone. I said, "Hi, this is Evelyn." There was talk on the other end of the phone. I'm listening. But I didn't hear it all. Because my eyes are looking at the sea. Look at that light on the horizon. Watch the waves hit the beach and then fall back again. I laughed. I don't know why I laugh. Not because the person on the other end of the phone said anything funny. It's because I stood there, standing in the wind, standing on the beach, holding my mobile phone, answering a work call, doing my own thing. This time, it's not for anyone else. I'm Evelyn Carter. I'm in San Francisco. I'm making my own designs. I sent the design files for the ring to the anonymous orderer. No postscript, no instructions, just documents. After I finished sending it, I closed my mailbox, turned off my phone, walked to the window, and opened the window. The sounds of the street flooded in, the sound of cars, bicycle bells, people talking, dogs barking. These sounds are mixed together, not quiet or pleasant, but very real. I leaned against the window frame and looked at the cafe across the street. There was a handwritten sign taped to the window of the cafe. The handwriting was nice but the spelling was wrong. I was wondering if I should go in and tell them. Then I laughed. No, it's none of my business. Let them be wrong. It's okay to be wrong. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and opened a new design file. New projects, new clients, new beginnings. I put my hand on the tablet, touched the pen tip to the screen, and drew the first line. That line is straight. Not crooked.